Hello and welcome to Crafting with the Desmond-Fish Public Library. My name is Beth and today I'm going to be showing you how to do paper quilling. And that is paper that you coil up into shapes and then glue down to create patterns. So what you need for this, first off, is paper to wrap into shapes. You need something very small, I like a toothpick, to wrap the paper around. You need glue to attach them to your paper. I like to pour my glue into a little container. This is just part of an egg carton, and use something to dip in the glue and apply. I find it gives me more control over how much glue I have and where the glue goes, as opposed to just squeezing it out. So the first thing we need to do is prepare our paper. I am using paper out of a drawing pad. You can just use computer paper. And I have this left over from another project. It's already an inch wide, but you can start with a big piece of paper and just cut it down further. And I'm going to cut mine into 1/4 inch strips. You can make it thicker than that, you can make it thinner than that. It is going to correspond to how far off of the paper your design sits. You can buy pre-prepared quilling paper in packs, and that's often 1/8 of an inch thick, but I like to start with a 1/4 inch. It's much easier to work with. So if you are lucky like me and have a sort of a cutting mat or other tool, one of the fastest ways to cut down paper, this is if you don't have a paper cutter, which would really be the ideal thing here, is just line up the markings on your board, your ruler, and your craft knife, and just use your ruler as a guide. I'm using a quilting mat, which is very nice because it has 1/4 inch markings on it. So I can very easily move my ruler down 1/4 inch each time, and then guide my craft knife, or box cutter, I guess, down beside it. And then I end up with these nice 1/4 inch strips. So it doesn't really matter how you get them, if you buy them, if you mark off paper by hand and cut it with scissors, but you are going to need 9 strips that are 1/4 inch across. So I'm going to get all my paper together and ready. So I have my 9 strips. I have some extra as well. That way, if one of the coils comes out and I don't like it, I have lots of paper to just do more. Sometimes it takes a little bit of practice. Some of my earlier ones that I did were a little bit wonkier than I liked, or I rolled them too tight and they didn't unroll enough. So it's nice to have extra paper. The first thing I'm going to show you, which is sort of the building block, the foundation of all paper quilling, is called a tight coil. So I have my toothpick, I have the end of my paper, and I'm going to wrap my paper around my toothpick, like so. And then I'm just going to continue rolling it between my fingers until I've rolled the paper all the way up. Now I want it to stay only 1/4 inch thick. So I can see here I'm getting more than 1/4 inch. So I'm just going to pinch down until it's back to being only 1/4 inch thick. There, you can see that there. Now this has fallen out, but I don't mind because I find if I keep on this the whole time, I wind it too tight. But it could be you don't have that problem. And really, you just need the toothpick to get started. So now that I have it in here, I'm just going to roll it between my fingers. I'm going to pinch and move it back to the end of my fingers. I'm going to roll again, pinch, move it back, roll it, until I very slowly have rolled it all the way up. Now this is what works best for me, but you may find there are other ways that you like to roll it that works better. Now I have it all the way rolled up like that, and I can pinch it to keep it so that it's not sticking out, but is nicely flush. And still holding it so it can't unravel, I'm going to find the end, the tail there, and I'm going to put glue on it. So I'm going to get some of my glue, which I have glued shut, which I often end up doing. There we go. I'm going to put out just a little bit, because if I put out more, it will dry before I get to using it. So now I've got my end. I'm holding it so it doesn't unravel. I'm going to put some glue on the end of the stick so I can control how much and where it is. And I'm just going to dab it there. And then I'm going to hold it for about 10 seconds, 30 seconds to make sure it sets and doesn't undo as soon as I let go. And this is called a tight coil, and it is the basic shape in paper quilling. Now it is done, I can put it down and go on to my next one. So I'm going to need one tight coil, and this is going to become the middle of the flower. Next, I'm going to do the petals, and I start in the same way. I start by wrapping my paper around the end of my toothpick, and then rolling it. And once I've got it started, I let my toothpick go, and I just roll it on my fingers. See if I can get them out of the way so you can actually see what I'm doing. And I roll the paper all the way up. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop it, and I am going to let it unravel a little so that it is a looser coil. And sometimes if I've wrapped it too tight, I can use my toothpick and tweeze it apart a little until I have something that looks like this. Now this is a loose coil, and to make it into a circle, I am going to put glue on the tail here, just like I did with the tight coil. And then I'm just going to hold it against the rest of it, just to give it some time to set. And then I can put it down. And you can see I now have a tight circle and a loose circle. So I need one tight circle, which is called a tight coil, and I'm going to want 7 of these. So I will show you again. Now you might end up with bigger than this when you end, or you might end up with smaller than those. It doesn't really matter how loose or how tight your 7 circles are, you just want them to be the same size. And that is why I recommend having a few extra pieces of paper, because as you practice and do your first couple, they might be different sizes, but then once you get a hang of it, you should get consistent. So I've rolled it all up, and I'm just going to let go. I'm going to let it unwind until it's about the same size as this one. Then I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to put some glue on the tail. I'm going to hold it to let it set. I'm holding it gently so it will pop back up into a circle, but with enough pressure to make sure that the paper is making contact with itself. And there we go, I now have 2 circles. So now I'm going to go ahead and make 5 more so that I have 7. Okay, I now have 7 loose coils. And to turn them into petals, and to make them sort of teardrop shaped, I'm just going to pinch on one side of the circle and make a crease at the end. And then it looks like that. And I'm going to turn all 7 of my loose quills into teardrop or petal shapes. By pinching the end. There, I now have the middle of my flower. Oh, and this one I did not squeeze hard enough. It's rebounded. There we go. And I have the petals to my flower. All that's left now is to make the stem. Now to do this, you're going to get another piece of paper and you're going to decide how long do I want my stem to be. So I'm going to stick my stem at the bottom here and I'm going to sort of just eyeball it down and think, you know what, I think that is a nice length. And then I am going to fold it and pinch so that I get that sort of shape. Now to make the leaves, I'm going to fold it back around and I'm going to sort of find the middle of the area I have left. Put it there and then fold this bit in. Okay, so here we go. I've creased it there. This is the first leaf and I will crease it again, sort of pinching it so it's snug into my first one, like that. Now I'm going to take this tail and I'm going to bend it in towards the stem, like that. And I want the ends of these to all meet up in there. Now I have a stem and 2 leaves, and I think, because right now this looks more like a heart to me, I like to have my leaves have a bit of a pointy end, so I'm just going to pinch them. And then this one, hold it where you can see it. Pinch it. And now I have a stem and 2 leaves. And to keep this all together, I'm going to take my glue, I'm going to undo it a little bit, and I'm just going to put some glue down in these folds, in the pinches. That way it'll stay when I'm not holding it. So now I have my stem and leaves. So the next step is to prepare the surface that I'm going to glue it all onto. So I am just using some scrap cardstock I have, since this side still is perfectly good. And I made mine 5 by 7. So I'm going to measure out and trim it to be 5 by 7. So I've trimmed my paper to be 5 by 7. Now, if you have a darker paper, really what I want is something that will show the contrast between the flower petals and the background. So if you use dark paper for this part, you could just use white paper. I only have white paper for this part, so I'm going to make this background darker so it stands out. So here's my scrap paper, and I think it looks nice with a border, and I made my border a 1/4 inch. I thought that would go well with the 1/4 inch high flower. Since I have this handy board, I'm going to use it. And I can line up a 1/4 inch at the sides here. And then trim down my paper. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, I now have backing paper. I've got some contrast paper that is cut slightly smaller than my backing paper to make a nice border. I'm going to attach the two. For this, I find a glue stick easier. And I want to get the glue right up to the edge of the paper, but I don't want to get it all over my cutting mat, or worse, all over this. So I put some scrap paper down. That way I can run my glue stick right up to the edge and not worry about getting it on anything I don't want to get it on. Now I'm going to move this carefully because it's gluey. I'm going to line this up. And then when I figured out where I want it, I'm going to start at one end, and I'm going to slowly press down, going towards the other. And this should give me a nice, flat, without any air bubbles job. Okay, so now the time has come to attach everything. So I like to give it a little bit of an eyeball first, get a general idea of where I want this to be. You know, if my petals are going to go up to there, then I want my middle about there. So I'm going to put my middle about here. And since there's a hole in the middle, well, I'm just going to make a little dot. Now I have my marker. I'm going to get some fresh glue because this glue has started to dry. Now I'm using a glue that will dry clear, and I recommend highly you use a glue that will dry clear. Otherwise you're going to be able to see the glue on your finished thing. I'm going to pick up what needs to go down. I'm going to get some glue on the tip of this, and then I'm going to ever so lightly just dab it on the back. And I want it to be on all of those edges of the paper. If it's not all completely covered, that's going to be fine, as long as it's mostly covered. I see my dot, and I'm going to place this down, and I'm going to hold it a couple seconds until I make sure it's set. There's the first part. Now for these, it's a little bit trickier because they're not so tightly wound, but really, you're just going to carefully dab glue on the ends. Let's see if I can get this to focus. And don't worry if a little bit sort of goes down the edge. That's why we're using glue that's going to dry clear. There we go. Now, if I wanted to further eyeball this, I could, or just take a look at it. But roughly, I'm going to have 3 petals on each side and 1 on the top. And it's really up to you how close or far apart you put them, because that in itself could also look nice. But I want all mine to be touching. I'm just going to hold a moment and lift away. And I'm pressing just hard enough so that the edge of the paper is firm against my backing, but not so hard that I bend or crease or crinkle anything. So just some gentle pressure to make sure that there's nice contact with the glue between all of the bits. And lift away. You can see already, since it's starting to set, my design is on my paper. So now I'm going to do the rest of the petals. So I've stuck down my last petal, which leaves me with this. So now it's time to place my stem. Now it's mostly about deciding how much space I want between the bottom of the flower and the edge of the paper. So I want it to be about equal to the space up here. I think that looks nice. If I wanted it further down, I could just move it further down like this. And if it was too big, I could always trim this paper. But I figure I can slip it all the way up in there and it'll go nicely. So I just have to put glue on the back. I'm going to very carefully put glue on the edge of the paper. I don't need to get the entire thing, but I want to get, you know, a little bit along most of it. And some on the leaves as well. Make sure I at least get the tip and some on each side. Just enough places that I'm happy it will be down snug. Now that I've got my glue on, I'm going to slide it in here. And I'm going to decide where I want it. And I think I like that. So I'm going to press down. The leaves are easier to press on because they are a little more stable since your weight is a little more distributed. So I'm going to hold there. And I'm going to Then, very gently, hold down the stem. And if the stem doesn't get all the way down like mine, you can see it can still move. You can also attach it by dabbing a little bit of glue in between the stem and the petal it's touching. And then this is a great use for your toothpick again, to sort of push them against each other so there's some contact there. I'm going to hold it for a moment so that I am confident the glue has set and will stick. Then I can let go. And there I have it, a quilled flower to go with my other quilled flower. And you can see that just between doing my first one and my second one, my petals got more consistent in their shape and a little less wonky. So it really is one of those things that the more you do it, the easier it is to do it consistently. And you can do so much more than flowers. If you had more space, I could keep going. I could do another whole ring of petals. I could make a mandala. I could use an old map for my background. I could use any scrap paper that I like the color of for this. There's really a lot you can do, but this is just a start, a beginning project that shows you sort of the beginnings of how you go about quilling. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you have fun with your paper, and I will post the next video next week. Bye-bye.